Hello again, Speak New Lifers, and welcome back to another video where we are touching on the Wisdom Challenge. As I mentioned yesterday or the day before, I'm just going to come on here and just share a little bit of wisdom, or at least what I gleaned from the Wisdom Challenge on this particular day. And yesterday I did day 6 with Chris Valentin, and I was talking about the mouth and the words that we speak, and just about not using our mouth to curse or to cuss, right? Because that's what they were talking about. One of the things that they did mention yesterday that I forgot to mention, which really kind of stood out to me, was when they were talking about ownership, in terms of being responsible for your life and taking ownership for your life and not playing the blame game. And that really struck with me because it's so easy sometimes to look at something else outside of yourself and blame that thing for the reason why you're not doing so well or why you don't have what you think you should have, and to look at somebody else and say, well, it's because of them, or it's because of this, or it's because of that, and that's why I'm like this. And I don't know, some of you probably even dated people like that who have done that to you in the past. It's like, oh, if you didn't get me angry, I wouldn't have shouted. You know, if you didn't upset me, if you had done this, then it wouldn't have been a thing. And so rather than taking responsibility for their lives, they look for someone to blame. And we see that goes all the way back to the Garden of Eden, right? Where Eve and Adam messed up. And rather than Adam taking responsibility for his wife and for himself and the word that God had given him and the instruction that God had given him, he then began to pass the blame. And first of all, he passed the blame straight to God. Like he said, it's the woman that you gave me. Basically saying, if you never gave me this woman, I wouldn't even have been in this situation. I wouldn't have wanted this fruit. I wouldn't have eaten it. But because you gave me this woman, now as a result, we now find ourselves in this situation. And who's to say if Adam hadn't just defended his wife and recognized that he was in the wrong also, not saying that Eve wasn't in the wrong, but if Adam had just held responsibility and accountability for the choices that he made, then who's to say what would have occurred? What would have occurred? You know, would the outcome have been different if Adam had just held up his hands and said, Lord, I got it wrong. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I made a really poor quality choice and decision. But the fact that he then went undercover and passed the blame and passed the buck, I don't know. Sometimes I read that and I'm just thinking to myself, if he had actually stood up and said, I've messed up and repented, would we actually be here doing what we're doing? I don't know. I really don't know. But anyhow, that's another story for another day. But today was day 7 and we had Jennifer Allwood in the Wisdom Challenge. Now, if you're watching this video and you're watching me for the first time and you don't know what the Wisdom Challenge is, I have provided a link in the description so that you can go register for the Wisdom Challenge. It is a proverb a day through the month of January, and it is run by a gentleman called Pedro Adao and the 100X team. And every single day they are bringing in an internationally known speaker to speak on the proverbs, and today was Jennifer Allwood, and they were talking about, the main thing that I got from their conversation was to keep your hands clean so that when the accuser shows up, which he will, when he shows up to accuse you and to destroy your life and to suck you into this hole of shame and guilt and condemnation and scandal, that he will discover that there's actually nothing there. And so even though he may come with the accusational finger, you will be able to be like Jesus and say, you know, the prince of this world cometh, but he have nothing. He's got nothing in me, on me. He has no evidence whatsoever. He's going to have to make this stuff up because there is nothing there. And I've often had this thought, actually, it's often gone through my head, like, one, our best place is to be in a position where when he shows up to point the finger of accusation, that there's actually nothing to point the finger at. And eventually, it doesn't matter how much he comes up comes at us with accusations, then those accusations basically have to fall to the ground, because people, once they start to investigate, will realize that there's nothing there. But, however, if you have found yourself in a situation where you are guilty and you have made those choices and you have done those things, then I realize that the sooner you own up to those things and you take responsibility for those things and ownership of those things, then again, he has nothing to put on you. Because it's almost like the whole thing of blackmail. The only reason why you're able to blackmail somebody is because there is that person is trying to keep something in the shadows and keep it in the covers and hidden from everybody. So you're able to get away with blackmailing them, right? Because that person doesn't want this information coming out. But what if somebody tried to blackmail you and you were the one who exposed the stuff that you did and said, you know what, I know there's probably going to be consequences with this, and I know it's not going to be favorable for me, but yes, I did it. I am guilty. Then at that moment, the scandal's over. Imagine if I don't watch much news, or I don't pay attention to many TV programs these days or whatever, but I know there have been scandals happening all throughout 2024. And, you know, the newspapers and news have been having a field day with trying to drag people through the mud as they try to get all this information, right? But what if those people just came forward and said, yeah, I'm guilty. This is my part. This is what I did. In that moment, that story is going to be over pretty quickly. People are going to lose interest pretty quickly. The only reason why the interest and the intrigue continues is because it's still under a cloak of darkness. However, if you bring it to the light, then what is there to investigate and keep dragging somebody through interrogation? I'm guilty. And it's like, yeah, okay, I recognize now I have to face the consequences. But I'm owning it. I often think that, if we were just to be the kind of people whereby we owned our mistakes, how different this world would be. Because Satan would have nothing to antagonize us with. But better yet, like I said, if we can get to a place where we are able to keep our hands clean, keep our heads up, and remain diligent, then even when they come with the accusational finger, there'll be nothing there. Absolutely nothing. And I remember just a while back, there was a family situation going on whereby somebody had made an accusation against our family, and it looked pretty dire. But at the beginning of that whole thing, when it kicked off, when the accusations started, I remember God gave me a word, and it was out of Isaiah 54. And it's the verse where it says, no weapon fashioned against you shall prosper. But it was in the Message version. And it says, and any accuser who brings you to court will be dismissed as a liar. You can bank on it. God's decree, something along those lines, right? And I remember when I read that thing spoke to me so deep on the inside. I knew that this thing was okay. And God was showing me, I believe, that yes, we were going to have to go through the pain of being accused of something that we weren't guilty of. However, if we stood our ground, there was a day coming in the future where the accuser would be dismissed as a liar. And it took almost 3 years because of COVID to get to a stage where it was actually the case, where when it came to court and the jury came back and said what they needed to say, they figured out and saw through the whole case. And within 14 minutes, every member of that jury came back and said, innocent, not guilty, not guilty, not guilty. And what happened? The accuser was dismissed as a liar. Now, we went through that thing. Okay, we went through that thing and it was hard at the time, but we went through knowing that we were innocent. But imagine going through something like that, knowing that you're guilty, and all you're doing is waiting for somebody to find you guilty. At that point in time, that's when I'm saying the best thing to do is to hold up your hands and say, I did it. And it reminds me of this time when I was at work and then my manager had asked me to do something and I dealt with it. And then for some reason, I took the original documents and shredded them. It wasn't my best day. It was not my best day. And about 2 months later, she came back to me and she said, oh, Davina, where's those documents that I gave to you? I kind of need them. And because I thought I was done with them, I had shredded them. And when she asked me, my heart started beating so fast in my chest. It was like pounding out of my chest, right? And I remember she kind of like emailed me or something. And then when I read it, I was like, oh, because instantly I knew I had shredded the documents. And I kind of sat in my chair for about 10 minutes and I was like, oh God, I'm gonna have to go and admit that I've done this thing. It was awkward, but I knew what I had to do. So I went up to her office, I knocked on the door, and I walked in and I just said, you know about that email that you just sent me requesting those documents? Kind of shredded them. They kind of don't exist anymore. And I remember the look on her face, like she wanted to, if she could, I'm sure she would have punched me. I'm sure she would have if she could. But at that moment when I held up my hands and said, I did it, what more could she say at that point? Apart from the fact that she was disappointed in that the papers were needed, but now they were gone. And I've just held up my hands and said, I've done it. And in that moment, I didn't feel great. It didn't feel like a great moment, but at least she knew. At least she knew it was out in the open. It was out in the open. And I think it says that in John 3, where it says, you know, those that do evil don't want to come to the light because their deeds will be revealed as evil. But those that come to the light, you know, I would find it, but I don't have my Bible here right now. Let me read it. Hold on. Okay. So the Bible that I have found to read it from is this Mirror Bible. So it's a bit wordy, but I'm just going to read it from here. And it says in verse 20, John 3, verse 20, it says, when someone is engaged in something worthless, they often fear exposure and feel threatened by the light. He who discovers the poetry of truth faces the light unashamedly, for his lifestyle boldly displays the workmanship of union with God. His works speak for themselves, made in heaven, wrought in God. Right? So basically it's just saying those that do evil don't want to come to the light, but those that are children of God, we come to the light, even if it means the risk of punishment from others. But at least then the whole threat of or being tormented by being blackmailed by Satan and, you know, knowing and our thoughts and our imaginations and our hearts condemning us and all the rest of it, that we come to the light so that we can find forgiveness. That's what I got. That's what I got from today's message. And so today's Proverb 7, because it was talking about the woman who was enticing this young man into her house because her husband was away and she had just put down new sheets and was looking for somebody to have fun with. No, absolutely not. So that's what I got from today's proverb. I don't know if anybody else saw it, but if you did, please leave the comments down below. Thank you for those that posted your comments concerning yesterday's proverb and how it's helped you and how it's helping you. And again, I will put the link to the wisdom challenge down below so that you can join in and get some wisdom for 2025, because we are going to need it. Like I said, I don't watch much news. I don't watch much TV. But even from the conversations that some people are trying to have with me at work concerning some of the stuff that's starting to kick off already, now that Christmas and New Year's is out of the way and the hype of the New Year's is now being tucked away into the corners of 2025, there's some things that are about to make themselves known or try to take over. And we are going to need wisdom. We are going to need the wisdom of God to know how to override and rise above all of the drama of 2025.